All right, everyone, we've got a little update on the DT50. Managed to get the swing arm off, as you can see, also the shock, and got the wheels off, and everything will be ready for inspection and also refinishing. So we're going to be looking at, obviously, getting some new brake shoes. These are absolutely worn, and when I actually had this thing loaded and working, the wear indicator was way on the very end of the spectrum, so it's like to there. So when it gets to that point, as you guys probably know, you're having to really pull those brake shoes out or push them out, and there's no more material that's left and usable. So yeah, these are gonna get changed pretty easy. I'm gonna potentially do some reshock rebuilding. I do need to get a new bumper in there. I'm going to be taking all the paint off of this and refinishing it with a nice OEM silver. And these bearings seem to be seized in there and stuck pretty hard, so I'm going to get those out. And the rest of it is going to be pretty easy. I mean, this is going to get potentially repainted. As I said, I want to get down to the OEM and I want to wax that and polish that up. And, it's a good quality paint. So I think once we get some of this grease and some of this other, crappy paint was put over it, we're probably not going to do much there. Any rust spots, though, I will repaint, and I will use a clear coat with hardener. And we're going to also handle these bars and top clamps and all that stuff. So let me show you guys what's going on with the motor. So some great news on the motor. And what we did here was we got it up on the bench, and basically, as I said, crank is very tight. That was one of the things tight, but of course working just fine. But that was one of the things that I originally looked at when I was like, man, do I just leave her to die in the barn, or do I, does she have hope? And the crank bearing is tight. There's no movement up and down, which really is hard to do with the piston flopping around there, but you can just pull straight up and down really perfectly here when you've got it down to the rod and there's nothing. So she's awesome there. So then my next question, or my next area to look at, of course, might be crank seals, but I wanted to look at some of these dimensions here, which is like, do I need to re-sleeve the cylinder? Do I need to overbore? And basically, I'm going to try to remember these off the top of my head. I should have printed out the page. So, go to the manual. Don't trust me on what I'm saying here. But essentially, you've got a 40 millimeter piston, and the tolerance should be around 0.05 millimeters difference between, or less, the piston and the cylinder. And I've been using a bore gauge, and what I've done is basically taken an average of the different measurements, and basically this is a kit I got on Amazon. It works pretty good, and what you do with this, it doesn't have an actual gauge, but what you do is you will basically take a series of measurements because you want to get an average. Now the hardest part is just trying to make sure that this is perpendicular, which you're not going to be perfect, but you get an average of measurements. And so these springs are now compressed, and then what you're going to do is you're going to turn this right here so you can tighten these springs and they don't push out anymore. We're just going to take a measurement. Now what we're doing is trying to see what this bore dimension is. And if it's over spec, if it's like truly worn out, then obviously we're going to need to overbore. We've gotten a measurement. We're right at around 39.98 millimeters. Stock is 40 mil, so this is less than stock. Well, that means that there's no real wear. Now, granted, my gauges could be off, my micrometer could be off, this device could have some weird shapes to it, maybe like a dome, at the ends. But pretty much I've been averaging around this. So that's very likely a sign that there is not a ton of wear here. Now the bike looks kind of like crap, and I'll tell you, I think she was not taken care of, but I only rode the bike from 91 till about 93, and it was an 88 model, and I got it in 91, and I didn't ride it all the time. So anyway, so that's where we're at. So then we're going to look at the piston. And again, we're looking at about 0.05 mil from my memory as the difference. So, all right, so I stopped the camera just to get this as specific and straight as I could. So we're at about 39.93. So if you look at this, we're pretty much at about 0.05 mil difference between these two. And you can see we've got a very tight piston. It will not drop in there that easy. So we're not getting any piston slop or anything. And the measurements are saying we're good. Now, the next thing you want to look at is the ring end gap. Now, I will drop a picture of the acceptable ring end gap. And I can tell you right now, the problem is with the rings because this is I'm going to drop the picture of the acceptable ring end gap. See if you can see this. Getting a little hard, but this is has written on it. I don't know if y'all can see that. Really hard to see, but this is basically 0.75 mil. We're going to drop that right there. Now, what I see already, as you guys can probably see, is there's definitely more gap. I can move that feeler gauge back and forth. And as I said, this one right here is 0.75 mil. I suspect there's probably a millimeter of gap there. Y'all see that? So that's too much. That's way too much. So we could do the same with the other one. And what you want to do is the top and bottom you want to see, because these are going to wear differently based on the force that the piston is going to experience. The top is probably going to have a different level of force than the bottom. And so we could do the same with the other one. Push it down. It's going to be easier to move the first one we put in down a bit. But again, we got a lot of gap here. You can see. Look at that. So yeah, basically we need new rings 100%, and very likely we're gonna obviously want to change out the lower end bearing, the upper end bearing here, the wrist pin, and the gaskets. So that's what's been going on, which is good news because that's actually a savings. Don't need to do the rebore and all that. That's what we want to look at. So I wanted to share that with y'all in case it was helpful if you're doing this type of work. The next job is going to be to clean up the bench a little bit. And I'll probably put the cylinder back on and tighten everything down and cover up everything because I want to clean this motor. I hate to take anything off with a dirty motor. Generally, I would never do that. I just kind of got ahead of myself because you don't want anything to fall inside the motor. Like one of these big pieces could seize up your motor if there's like, little gravel or little bits of, small dirt, rocks, etc. I mean, not a good thing. So we're going to get everything back on, tighten it down, and then we're going to clean this thing, and then we're going to keep going with this. So that's where we're at. Hope you guys are enjoying the videos. If you're new to the channel or if you're a DT50 guy who found this, I've done rebuilds on the WR500, which I've documented on the channel, documented the 200X. Haven't really documented the Quadzilla, although I did recently do some plastic repair. So I had a little cut right there, and I did fix that and put a warning sticker on it. I just did a CR500, KX500. So a lot of cool stuff if you like bikes or these kind of videos. We'll see y'all on the next one. If you liked it, hit like and subscribe. We'll see you on the next video. Much appreciated.